What's up, everybody? This is Aaron Marshall. This is the present day saint. This will be a cool episode, I hope, because I hope it's cool. I hope all of them are cool, but because really this one is just me sort of laying out some things that I think are happening, laying out some things that are happening in the ministry, and then so sort of what's going to happen with the ministry of the next year or two, or hopefully 10 years. And so I'm also starting to try to put some of the podcasts on my YouTube channel, and so we'll have them there as well. So, all right, if you listen to the podcast, you know we're like 20, 25, 26, 27 episodes in. You know my backstory. Okay, we work with a ministry called Ratio Christi, which is Latin for the reason of Christ, on college campuses all over the country. We're on about 125 campuses. My family and I had moved to Wilmington, North Carolina. I was a lawyer practicing law in Charlotte, the Charlotte area of North Carolina. In 2012, we moved to Wilmington, North Carolina, to start the Ratio Christi chapter there at UNC Wilmington. By God's grace, it blew up. It just kept growing, and over the 7 years that we were there, and so we ended up having 5 of us on staff, and just ministry was thriving. I was teaching a high school apologetics class. We had a chapter at, we had a high school chapter, we had a community college chapter, we had the UNC Wilmington chapter. We were probably one of, if not the biggest chapters from a numbers perspective. We were doing women's groups, men's groups. We planted a little home church out of it. I mean, it was awesome. And so in many ways it was an answer to prayer, but sort of remove. So that's kind of where we were, let's say this time last year. So this time in 2019. Well, if you backed up 2 years, in 2017, I'd come out here to Utah with Corey Miller, who's the president of Ratio Christi. He's LDS. He's former LDS. Now, obviously, he's an evangelical Christian. He runs Ratio. But we were trying to hire people out here in Utah. I do the hiring for Ratio nationally, or at least go through the interviews with people. And so we were trying to hire people out here in Utah. And I really, I fell in love with the state. I was burdened by the lack of Christianity here in the state. This is the least evangelical state in the whole country. And so that burden I took back with me to North Carolina, and had conversations with my wife, and so all of that led to us deciding. I like starting things, so the idea of coming out here and just kind of starting something from scratch was exciting for me. And so we decided, we're gonna try it. So the plan was we'd come out here August of last year, so August of 2019, be out here for a year, help get Ratio Christi chapters started at the University of Utah, and then hopefully at Utah Valley University, and then we would head back. At least that was the plan. And we didn't know how we would like it out here. We didn't know what the kids would think of it, all that kind of stuff. Well, turns out the kids loved it, love it. My wife loves it more than she thought. I love it. I mean, it's been hard to do ministry out here. I mean, so from a just numbers perspective, it hasn't been that great. I think we're planting some seeds and we're doing some things that need to be done. But I mean, if you just look at straight numbers, hasn't been all that great. The easy thing would be to go back to Wilmington and just kind of pick up what that is, and just kind of keep building on it. And there's a lot of draw to that. And there would be ultimately nothing wrong with doing that. But, when we moved out here, I kept feeling, and I know you don't based our life on feelings, but I kept feeling drawn to Utah County specifically. So state of Utah is the least evangelical state in the whole country. Utah County is the least evangelical county in the whole country, less than 1%. I think it's like 0.5% Christian, evangelical Christian. And that's where BYU is. That's a flagship, university for the LDS church. And then also Utah Valley University is there, which is the biggest university in the state of Utah. And it's like 8-10 miles from BYU. So the goal was, maybe we can start a Ratio Christi chapter at UVU, and we're working on doing that. Well, and I've told the story before, but just as sort of the backstory. And I'd always thought about, for the last 2 years, I've thought about doing a Christian Study Center in Wilmington. Now, Christian Study Center, there's a consortium of Christian Study Centers. There's maybe 25 or 30 of them across the country. And these are just, they're study centers. So they're Christian study centers, places where students can come and study. So kind of a safe place to study. But then there's lots of different ways you can do things with that. You can have programs there, studies there. You I know there's a guy who does a Christian Study Center at Virginia Tech, and I've met with him a couple times, and they're doing almost like a scholars program, and they got faculty involved. It's just really cool. They have their own building, so they can do these kind of things. And so I've thought about that for a while. There's a guy who's interested in starting a Christian Study Center in Wilmington. So we even thought about maybe kind of see how could we pair that with the ministry that we're already doing with Ratio Christi. And so that's happening in the sort of all like in the fall, 2 years ago and into the fall, into the, and just thinking about that. And then in the fall, I headed down to Ephraim, Utah, which is kind of in the middle of nowhere, Utah. And I met a guy named Chip Thompson who had started Tri Grace Ministries, trigrace.org. Check out their stuff. Awesome. Have him on the podcast at some point. But they had started a coffee shop in Ephraim, Utah, again, middle of nowhere. I think coffee shop's not going to be very successful, but it was right across the street from a junior college, Snow Junior College. And they actually used it as a place to draw people in, to start conversations. There's a mini, biblical archaeological museum, say that 10 times fast, archaeology museum, and in the coffee shop, and just to help, because one of the claims of the LDS is that the Bible has been corrupted, and so it starts conversations there, but just a safe place to start conversations. And so the idea sort of started percolating. What if you could combine a Christian Study Center with a coffee shop, and then we could do that near BYU? We're not going to get on the campus at BYU. It's a private school. Our mission statement would, we would want to convert all of those students to evangelical Christianity, so they're not going to let us on the campus. But what if we started a coffee shop or cafe, you can call it whatever you want, right beside the campus that was part of a Christian Study Center? And so the idea was percolating. And then when we brought the group out here in March, we brought a group of Ratio Christi students from across the country out here to do evangelism, and it was just super successful. And so then the idea kind of percolated even more. What if we added that as a component to it? And then down the line, have all these other ideas about things that can happen with it as well. So all that's kind of percolating. Then obviously Corona happens, and then all of the campus stuff we're doing falls apart in some sense. So the idea of moving out here, starting these chapters, and then leaving, that sort of fell apart because there is no momentum now for those two chapters. It was just starting to build some, and then it kind of fell apart. So all of that, wrapped up into, the last month, really just praying about what are we going to do. And so the decision that we've come to as a family is that we're going to stay out here for at least one more year. So we're not gearing any more timelines. We're not giving a timeline of, 1 year or whatever. We're just saying at least 1 year. So it could be longer, it could be, I don't know, I guess it could be shorter. But at least 1 year is the plan. So we're going to try to re-rent our house that we're in right now for another year. And the goal would be that we would continue to build. So what's the goal for the next year, then 3 years, 5 years? Immediate goal is that we continue to build the Ratio Christi chapters that we started last year, or that we're beginning to start at the University of Utah and at Utah Valley University. So continuing to do ministry at the University of Utah and Utah Valley University, just as we did this past year. I got some ideas about how we can do that better. We've learned a lot this past year. So I'm excited about that, doing a lot more evangelism, which I've just really developed this love for evangelism that I necessarily didn't have when we were, back at UNC. I mean, I had it, but we just didn't do as much as we're doing now. I did more evangelism this year, had more evangelistic conversations this year, probably than in the history of the chapter at UNCW combined. I mean, we just were talking to people all the time because there's so many people out here are wanting to talk. So we're going to continue to do that. But the exciting part of the thing that we're trying to plan to move towards is to create a study center right across the street from BYU. So we had a study center, let's call it the Schaefer House, in the mold of Francis Schaeffer, just to give it a name as we work through the vision. We have a building where we could place that students could come and study. Certainly a hub for any of the there are a few evangelical students at BYU, so just a place for them to go, but also a place for us to do Ratio Christi meetings or apologetics meetings, a place for us to do Bible studies, a place for us to have studies, to do some interact with BYU students, faculty, staff. I mean, just to be an outreach to the to be an outreach to the LDS population in Utah County, and have a building where we can do that. And part of that would, as part of that Schaefer House, I'm just calling it Schaefer House now, would be, a coffee shop. So let's call it, the cafe or whatever it is. And the coffee shop would, we'd serve coffee, we'd serve other drinks, but it would be what would draw people in. So we would have hope that, what I'm envisioning is it's a house, it's a building that draws people in. So the coffee shop, the study center, we would have, a patio where people could play, we have music, maybe a basketball court or something out there. There's a house that I was looking at that I think would be perfect for it. So if you're a praying kind of person, start praying that we would get that house, because it's right across the street from the campus, right down from the missionary training center, which is where they train all their missionaries to go across the world. But it just has, so all those, it has a basketball court, has this cool gathering patio, but all those things that would gather people. And then you're able to have evangelistic conversations with people. But also, as we're doing evangelism in Utah County, if we're doing it at UVU or just knocking on doors in Provo or at BYU, then we've got a place that we can invite people to come. They can come and we can continue conversations that are there. So it can be a sort of a landing spot in Utah County, to a hub where we can draw people. And then, so building on what Chip has done down in Ephraim, the idea would be what we could do with these Ratio Christi applied apologetics mission trips that we've done 2 already out here in Utah that were super successful, is that would give us a home base for those. So if we found a building big enough, we could actually house the people that came in, student groups from across the country, Ratio Christi and otherwise, house them there. And that could be our home base for the mission trips, where they're going out and they're doing Temple Square and they're going to BYU and Provo and doing evangelism and all these other things. But this could be their home base, but also gives them a place to invite students to come back. We could do some kind of barbecue or something there, one of the nights a week, and invite students from BYU over there just to hang out and just to, again, to create conversations and to build relationships. So we're doing Ratio Christi at the University of Utah and at UVU. We're doing Ratio at the Schaefer House right across from BYU, but we're also doing just sort of relational ministry by building relationships with the BYU students at the coffee house and bringing them in. We could do talks on biblical archaeology. We could do apologetics talks. We could do Bible studies at the house. We could also have a place for other ministries. So, crew or navigators that are out here, or any of the other ministries. There's a group called Intersect down in the Provo area. They could use the house as a place to do ministry. And so that could be a gathering place for multiple ministries, evangelical Christians in Utah County. And so I think that is very exciting, especially for people who are excited about evangelizing, right? We want to evangelize the LDS. We want to do it by building relationships. And so as I'm working through the vision, so I've been reading a couple books on vision, a book called Traction by a guy named Gino Wickman, and a book called The Vision Driven Leader by Hyatt, and then working with a friend of mine, Eric Roman. He's the one that gave me the Traction book on creating the vision for this. We were coming up with what's the unique about this? What are the uniques that would make this, I think, a ministry different from all the other ministries? Well, we came up with this idea of true spirituality, or which is a Schaefer book, but true Christianity. So it's head, heart, and hands, right? So it's not just the heads. We got all the apologetics portion. Theology matters. So the head part is super important, but so is the evangelistic part, and so is the relational part, and so is the social part, and so is just we're a community, right? So we're combining both of those, but also the evangelistic part, and so the ministry then ends up serving both Christians and non-Christians. Non-Christians because we're helping them to understand why we believe what we believe as Christians, right? We're why we believe this is true. So we're looking at the evidence for Christianity. So that's for non-Christians. But for Christians, that we don't all believe the same thing, and why evangelism is so important. And so how evangelizing to the LDS will actually strengthen your faith. And so we're building up the faith of believers and hopefully building faith in non-believers, and we want to see them coming to salvation. And so these groups that are coming from across the country, we get a chance to do evangelism here. And Utah is so the location becomes our third unique, and we're coming up with maybe one or two more. Well, sort of making those sound a little better, or just rewiring them a little bit. But I think the location is certainly one of them. The location is unique because, number one, people want to talk about Jesus here, and two, they don't believe the same things you do as evangelical Christians. So it's a safe place to have conversations, but it's also a place where you'll learn what you don't know, and you'll learn why it's so important to know the scripture, and so it's going to cause you to want to examine the scripture more. And so we're coming up with almost like a book title could be, how evangelizing the LDS, how I got saved by evangelizing the LDS, or something like that, where you recognize that you recognize maybe some parts of your theology, certainly tons of parts of your theology and your understanding of Christianity that were deficient, but you didn't know that until you started evangelizing with LDS. And so you're meeting LDS people which are great people. You're challenging them for what they believe, because we believe they believe a false gospel. But you're growing as a Christian. You're challenging them, and we're spreading the gospel here in Utah, especially Utah County. So we're creating a beachhead. We're sort of going into the least evangelical state and then the least evangelical county, and putting a sort of beachhead right there at BYU to start conversations. So not to attack, but to start conversations. And then down the line, maybe we have a retreat center maybe in the mountains here in Utah, and we could bring people from across the country to do retreats, and maybe you have a place for those that are leaving Mormonism, the LDS who are leaving, to have a safe place where they could go as transition. Maybe classes up there. Eventually, you could have a place for those that are coming on mission trips to stay. The other thing that I didn't really mention is those that were coming here on mission trips could then intern with us for a semester or a year. They do that down in Ephraim. Chip does it down there, but they could intern with us for semester or a year. So they come down here, they like what they see as part of the mission trip, and now they stay with us or come back in for a semester or a year, and then they work in the coffee shop. So they're building relationships with students there. They've got a place that they can send. They've got a place that they can send their LDS friends, or draw them to when you just want to continue conversations. The coffee shop, the study center. But so now students are coming here on mission trips. They're staying for the internships. The community is being engaged with the true gospel, the biblical gospel. The campus now at UVU and BYU is beginning to be challenged theologically, and hopefully begin to be saturated with, or begin that process of saturation of the gospel. And the goal would be revival out here in Utah. One of our pastors told us that the only place in the country, according to him, that has never had a revival, a biblical revival, is this part of the United States, the sort of this Western front out here. Wow, what an opportunity, right? I mean, what an opportunity. And so there are amazing people that have been coming out here, that have been out for years, that have created this sort of beachhead. And what if we could just bring in tons of students that would come out here, that would want to stay, that would want to bring the gospel out here? I mean, if you want to find an unreached people group, where sort of a safe place to go to ministry for an unreached people group, you don't have to go all the way across the world. You can come right here to Utah. And so I think that's exciting. So I think we can sell that to people, and students, and get them excited about that, and then they want to come out here. And now we're doing Ratio at the chapter, at 3 colleges out here now. 5 total now. We've got Weber State, Utah State, the University of Utah, and Utah Valley University. So we got 4, and then we could do it at BYU with this, and then the goal would be we'd start other chapters as well. But we could focus, me personally, we could end up focusing at UVU and at BYU with Ratio and apologetics ministry. The coffee shop would be sort of a home base to draw students in, and people from the community to have conversations. These mission trips, these Ratio Christi mission trips, could bring people from across the country, and not only just encourage them to come here to Utah, but also when they go back to their chapters, now they've learned evangelism. They've learned why it's so important to be doing this. They've had a really good introduction to it. So the goal would be, now they're doing that back on their college campuses and their universities. So we're seeing more evangelism on the college campuses all across the country. So it's not just, come out here to Utah. It's come learn how to do, I think, what we call true Christianity, evangelism, knowing what you believe and why you believe it, practice it out here in a safe place with people that don't believe what you believe, and then take that back to your university. And so I think there's tons of opportunity with that. And so I'm super excited about it. And so that's what we're going to try to work on. And then we'll see if that works out. And if it does, awesome. And if it doesn't, then, we'll kind of reevaluate, this time next year and continue to do that. But that's what we're going to shoot for is that ministry. So if that excites you, if that's something that you're in, you would want to get a hold of that. I mean, obviously we're going to have to raise funds and this is, obviously a terrible time to do this with, the economy, but God is bigger than this. But so we're going to have to raise, what we're going to need to do is buy a building. Again, we found a cool house that would be perfect. I mean, but we're gonna have to buy that building. So we're going to need investors to help buy a building, people that want to partner with us financially, prayer partners, thousands and thousands of those. If you want to partner with us prayerfully on that, we'll need people. I need people that will support us individually, me individually, especially as we try to get this up and running. So if you want to talk to us about that, I'd love to, tell you how you can get involved that way. But we're also going to need people to come out here. So there are some people already who, have seen this vision and are considering maybe moving out here to help to do all these things. Because we, doing Ratio at the University of Utah and at Utah Valley University, and then now with what we're calling it now, the Schaefer House and the coffee shop or the cafe that's a part of that, and all the other things that could come from that. We need people. And so we need people that want to come and catch that vision. So if that vision excites you and interests you, and you think, man, I think I'd like to be a part of that, then contact me. Let's talk. Let's find people that are caught by that vision, that they're kind of people that we want in the ministry and that are going to be a good fit. But what if we could get a little army to come, that's out here, maybe people that are already out here, to build that up. And so we need financial backers, we need prayer partners, we need people that just want to move out here. We need those that are already here to kind of partner with, and we just need lots and lots and lots of prayer. So anyway, so that's exciting. That's kind of where we're headed with the ministry. And so I just put this out to let people to kind of know where we are and what we have going in the future. And so anyway, again, I'd love to talk to anybody about this. If you are interested in learning more about it, how you can be involved, all that kind of stuff, then certainly, email me, call me, text me, get in touch with me, send smoke signals, carrier pigeons, however it is, just get in touch with me. And let's see how, maybe you can be a part of it. We'd love for, in some way. So again, financially, prayerfully, moving out here. If you're already out here, we'll need video people. We'll need all kinds of things. And so I'm working on the vision, working on putting together the vision this month, and then we'll start unveiling that, for this sort of well-orbed ministry. And I'm excited, man. I think we could bring 10-ish groups out here a year on those mission trips. And that could create a pipeline for interns. And, we could, have this house. I think it would just be awesome as a landing place. And then we're able to do the ministry at UVU and build up a Christian presence there. And then at BYU to begin to infiltrate there. And then all throughout the community in Utah County. So anyways, I'm excited about it. So if you want to, learn more or talk to me more about it, then please hit me up. Well, if you like what you're hearing on the Present Day Saint, please subscribe to us on iTunes. I think we're about at 1,500 downloads now. So we're slow and steady. And so I think we have like 60 or 75 unique listeners according to the stats on Buzzsprout. So like and share the podcast. If you think this will be something that other people would enjoy, let them know, and please let them know about it, and maybe they'll subscribe as well. And if you want to support the podcast, so the podcast will be one part of this ministry. I didn't really mention some other things we're going to do social media wise, but the podcast, I think, will be certainly part of the ministry and getting people to know what we're doing. And if you want to support us that way, you can do that through Patreon at the Present Day Saint on Patreon. You can also support us through our Ratio Christi ministry it's a 501c3. So you get your tax deductible donations through that. So if any of those things are interesting to you, or you're interested, then let me know and I can get you set up on those donations. But really what we need right now is prayer that God, this is a big vision, that God would do what God does, and that God would show up in a mighty way here in the state of Utah. And we would see revival here, and we would see hundreds and thousands and tens of thousands of LDS that are coming to true saving faith in Jesus, and those who have left the LDS, so the atheists and those that are here, that the tech sector that are, they just are spiritual but not religious, they would come to Jesus, and we'd see a revival in Utah County, and then in the state of Utah. Wouldn't that be exciting and something cool to be a part of? So I'm excited about it, and I hope that you would want to join us in that, and hopefully this podcast and this ministry can be a little piece of that God would use to make that happen. So anyway, so thanks for listening to this episode of the Present Day Saint. I'm excited for, as you can tell by what God has for us, and I'll keep everybody updated on the mission as we go through, and that maybe do a monthly update or something of where we are, and then can continue to keep churning out episodes that I hope are interesting and encouraging and enlightening, and help you know better what it is to be a Christian, as we think deeper and deeper about what it is to be a Christian, and then live that out here in the state of Utah. Well, until next time, this is Aaron Marshall, the Present Day Saint, signing off.